Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sydney Alt.net November. Sorry we're running a bit late today. We had some technical difficulties at the start, but we have everything sorted now. So welcome aboard. So chuck in a comment if you're there to make sure we're not just talking to ourselves here. I'll say sorry for the late start. So yeah, please chuck in a comment if you're there. Oh, good. We have Francis at least. That's a good start. And we definitely have Stephen too.
We were waiting for it to cool down a little bit for Francis. That's the reason for the late start.
So as usual, we've got the JetBrains licenses to give away. So 2 JetBrains licenses, and for any of the products. So listen and stick around to the end, and I'll ask you 2 questions as usual. And the first people to answer get the prize with the correct answer, of course.
Just one thing. I can't see the stream on Twitch TV. Is that just me, or can anyone
really?
Yeah.
We have C# of T put a comment.
Yeah.
Can you let us know? Yes. Can you all see? Oh, George. Yes, if you can see the stream coming through.
Can? Okay. For some reason, I'm in the chat, but I can't see the stream.
No, Lord Teaspoon says he can't see the stream coming through.
Yeah. All I see, it says offline.
George says he can now.
Okay.
Lord Teaspoon is coming through for you now.
Let me just start. I just had to press refresh.
Oh, okay. All right, so hit refresh on the browser, everyone, and that should hopefully bring everyone live. Lord Teaspoon, can you see us properly now?
Yeah, just try and press refresh. I think that was my problem.
I might have to end up giving a lightning talk.
Well, we got a little bit of time. Sorry. All right. So this looks good. So let's assume everyone can see us now, and we'll start rolling. So I just mentioned, for anyone who missed it earlier, we have the JetBrains licenses to give away as usual. So listen for the questions at the end. And since we're a bit late, we won't have too much of an intro. But I'm very excited to introduce Stephen, who you've probably met at drinks and other things. He's a long-time member of the Sydney Alt.net user group, and Sixpack and various agile groups and agile movements from the early days as well. So he's going to give us an interesting talk on technical debt. I'm guessing it might be a program that he knows about very well as the centerpiece for the technical debt, but he'll tell you more about that. So let me pass over to Stephen. You ready, Steve?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thanks very much for that, James. Yeah. Now, the topic is technical debt, and the subtitle is how much you can choose to pay, and how much may be chosen for you. So there are 2 phrases in that that subtitle. The first phrase is the first phrases is the technical debt that we sort of I think most of us are aware of, and it's what we believe that we can choose to pay at the beginning of a project, and it comes with a sort of a trade-off, sort of between sort of short-term expediency to deliver versus longer-term future costs. But the second phase is related, but it's more an external. The source is external. What can be chosen for us over the life cycle of an application, and it's caused by the impacts of developments in our industries, technologies, frameworks, languages, tool sets, software development and management paradigms. Now, I've emboldened software development and management paradigms because I believe that they actually determine, well, what are the appropriate set of technologies and frameworks, languages, and tool sets that that are relevant to us in our development environments. Now, the more successful an application is, the longer its life cycle, and consequently, the greater the impact of these external sources of technical debt over its life cycle. The definition, or the first person to coin the term technical debt, was Ward Cunningham. Now you may remember him as inventor of the wiki and also signatory to the Agile Manifesto. He used it in terms of a financial debt metaphor, that you were accumulating interest on outstanding capital by expediting delivery at the expense of quality. The accumulating interest was the equivalent of increased software entropy until future repayments were made, and those future repayments would be in the form of refactoring, architecture, design, or code. Now, this quote, and I guess as I read it, there'll be you'll recognise a lot of the agile practices of sort of get release of a minimal viable product and then iterative development. With borrowed money, you can do something sooner than you might otherwise. But then until you pay back that money, you'll be paying interest. I thought borrowing money was a good idea. I thought that rushing software out the door to get some experience with it was a good idea. But that, of course, you would eventually go back as you learn things about the software. You would repay that loan by refactoring the program to reflect your experience as you acquired it. Now, it's the technical debt concept is very much based on the three-legged stool constraints metaphor, where a stool has three legs, and each of those is a significant characteristic. In this case, say quality, cost, and speed are the attributes of each of the three stools. Now, because of the inherent interdependencies between these characteristics, you can choose two, but not three. So you choose two of them and recognize, okay, well, there'll be the third one. That's the trade-off that you've got to make. Now, and that's okay. Quality, cost, and speed, and this applies not just to project management, software development, but in many other fields. It's also a similar phenomenon, a bit like, say, the 80-20 rule, and that, but it's quite often it's in other fields it's a different set of three significant attributes. There may not always be quality, cost, and speed. Now, the assumption of technical debt is that an application will survive long enough to incur future costs. And so that, as Ward Bell said, okay, there's a need to expedite initial delivery. Well, there is a need to expedite initial delivery quite often to ensure that there will be a future for the application. Now technical debt, I've been to places where we used to have where our Scrum sprints would be in cycles. So say two development feature development sprints, and then a technical debt sprint. And each technical debt sprint had a particular theme. It might be that as preparation for it would be increasing our automated test coverage, unit tests, end-to-end tests, or improving our CI/CD pipelines, or another sort of a technical debt theme that all the development teams would would have to do as part of the technical debt. Now, I've used it sort of a sample application, say a snapshot, say September 2000, which was the Sydney Olympics here in Sydney, and compared it, say, as the same application today. Now, it's a successful vertical market application sold to real estate agencies for managing sales and more often, say, rental properties. It was sort of back then, it was a classic multi-user client service architecture, SQL Server, backend with Visual Basic 6 client. There were quarterly updates on CDs that were mailed out to customers. Now, many of the real estate agencies were small offices without dedicated IT resources, and somebody would have to install those updates and apply them on the one PC for the office, and manage their own data backups and disaster recovery. Now, that same application today, it's sort of the business has been very successful, and it now manages nearly 2 million properties across Australia and New Zealand. And they're looking to expand to UK and North American markets possibly, because of it's a scalable cloud-native application hosted on one of the big cloud providers, serverless functions, loosely coupled message-driven, multi-tenanted microservices, lots of third-party integrations. And so for the customers, it's what we call a software as a service application, where the customer only has to manage, say, other than the data entry, authentication and authorization settings. There's no more, every time they use it, it's the latest version, and the disaster recovery, that's all managed on the platform. Now, I've just called these significant relevant changes that have occurred, I've just called them, say, for inflection points. And there would have been a lot of them that happened, say, between September 2000 and today, that enabled, say, in the technology, the frameworks, the languages, tool sets, and the paradigms that have enabled that application to be developed from that VB6 SQL Server to a cloud-native application with potentially global reach today. Now, if we had chosen to ignore all those external technical developments, how long would that VB6 application have survived? Now, the reason why I chose this particular application was that back in 2011, 2012, I was working for a company called Console Proprietary Limited, and their main application that was where they were earning their revenue actually was a VB6 application with SQL Server, and the quarterly updates were sent out as CDs. But I was part of a team that was developing a replacement application, so a multi-tenanted, data center hosted application in Silverlight MVVM. Now, I'm sure that everybody sort of can see the irony of developing a cutting-edge application in Microsoft Silverlight that Microsoft soon afterwards made redundant. But so we can see that the cost of falling behind for applications, it accumulates with every one of these significant developments. Now, some of the more significant ones, and the advantage of selecting, say, September 2000, is that, say, in 2001, well, Microsoft released C#, the original C# and the .NET framework. So we were going from an object-based Visual Basic 6 with procedural code to C# with and even say VB.NET and F# or as object-oriented programming codes. So there was a very significant paradigm shift, and for probably for several years, many of us were using C#, an object-oriented programming language, to write procedural code, and until we sort of we're able to sort of make that a paradigm shift to object oriented. And even sort of more recently, I would say in the last couple of years, we're now in a very much in a post OOP world where the emphasis is now more on functional programming, so especially if you're sort of working with TypeScript and JavaScript, and sort of even say, let's say, serverless functions. Now, so February 2001, the Agile Manifesto was signed. So this is the beginning of, it's sort of a more formal means of communicating to the wider software development world. So the Agile principles and practices, so which then started to become much more popular, and so refactoring, TDD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, iterative development, Scrum sprint. So these all became much more dependency injection, a much more part of our everyday development environments. With .NET, we initially say WinForms, and then sort of web forms, say on the web, but it was sort of a leaky abstraction where we try sort of over the state. We were trying to make a stateful HTTP with the web forms. That say separation of concerns, solid principles, say for Bob Martin's, Uncle Bob Martin's work. The MVC patents of Ruby on Rails was very, very popular in the noughties, so much so that Scott Guthrie developed the initial ASP.NET MVC for the .NET space, open source software and tools, and that was the beginning of the alt.NET movement, which gave rise to this group. Git distributed version control. I can remember working with Microsoft SourceSafe and Microsoft Teams before there was a Git based version of it. Microsoft their MVVM Silverlight, and Adobe Flash was another technology that was very popular and then made redundant. Now I've highlighted the next one. So Windows dependent .NET, the original .NET framework, and moving to cross-platform .NET Core, and it's such a some of these okay, I've called them inflection points, are very difficult barriers to overcome. But if you don't overcome it, let's say I'm sure there are many applications that are still in the .NET framework, and it means that sort of there's so many other technologies that you just can't have limited access to, if at all, because we've not overcome that barrier of getting across to say, okay, what was originally called .NET Core, but there's now since .NET 5 just .NET, and that's been now sort of with an annual release cycle. We've sort of just had .NET 9 recently released. RESTful APIs, GraphQL, WebSockets, say on the client side, JavaScript, jQuery, AngularJS, and sort of that for the Angular 2, from Angular 2 on, React, sort of the React meta frameworks like Next.js, TypeScript, and with a lot of these clients and these technologies, periodically there are new versions. With Angular, they have a 6-monthly cycle, and these frameworks and libraries, they've got dependencies themselves. If you working with Angular, okay, well you've got tight dependency for a long time, not so much now on say RxJS, probably also say NGRX store. So when there are new versions, so you've got sort of other new versions of other software that you've got to update as well. We've gone from on-premises to data center hosted to cloud providers, and the myriad of services that AWS or Google or Azure offer in machine language, artificial intelligence, big data analytics that otherwise we wouldn't have access to, but we do have ready access to now. And there's that we now talk in terms of cloud native application architecture with, say, serverless functions and message driven and microservices, big data analytics, AI integration. And I'm sure there's also a lot that I've not thought of. And so what will happen in the future? How far off is quantum computing, and what will the impacts of that be? So the costs that they accumulate the interest when it's not paid. Now I've just these externally imposed costs on, let's say, on our sample application from when it was a VB6 SQL Server application. The cost, these technical costs, keep accumulating the further we fall behind. Say from the original mailed CDs to now it's internet access. So every time the client logs on, they have access to the latest update. From WinForms to mobile first responsive design clients, procedural program to TDD, driving best designs in object-oriented programming, ASP.NET MVC plus jQuery to web APIs to plus Spark clients like Angular, React, or Vue. And as I said before, so we've moved from OOP to sort of post OOP, say with version control systems. Say if you're working with COBOL, you're probably using carbon dating as your version control system. We're now working, say, with Git that will cater for distributed teams. And as I said before, that going from the Windows constrained .NET 4.8 to the cross-platform .NET Core, and then from .NET 5 Plus, sort of a big hurdle in our .NET space. Classical layered architectures, and we now talk in terms of, say, cloud native applications. But I see the primary motivation for all these developments that are happening. Okay, I've used the one word scalability, and it's scalability as far as, say, one, global application reach and the technical capabilities that the cloud provides us with, and we've moved from, say, we've converted, say, risky capital expenditure when we're having to invest in on-premise servers and infrastructure to a known current expenditure where we just pay AWS or Azure or Google Cloud every month for what we use on a pay-as-you-go basis, and that we can easily scale up and scale down depending on the load at any point, the workload at any point in time. Now the other aspect is the software development productivity. Increasingly, we are working at higher levels of abstractions with our languages and our tools. So we're now working very much, say, with logically testable design, logically testable secure infrastructure. One of my development philosophies is that we simplify complexity so that we can manage greater levels of complexity. Now we're so much less focused on the physical infrastructure that's involved in building, deploying, and running our applications, so it's the physical view, and we can now devote so much more of our time and focus on developing and delivering the business value that our applications deliver, the logical view. Now the technical debt costs of not upgrading, of not taking advantage of this scalability, which is sort of the increased reach and the productivity. Now it's upgrading. Yes, there are costs, but rather than the cost, we should consider them more as an investment of maintaining our competitiveness. Now, in competitive markets, some of those costs of not upgrading would be, well, we're losing our application capability that our competitors would have by using these services, and also sort of we don't have the same speed to market that they have. So we're not able to, we wouldn't be able to match them on pricing and not have the same as wider market reach to be able to compete with them. And even say in markets, say niche markets that are uncompetitive, you'll probably find that companies are unable to hold on to and attract their best developers. So they'll end up with just developers who are in effect happy to retire at the company and are happy to sort of keep working with whatever technology, sort of, well, what is now a legacy technology. So the costs of keep accumulating with each of these new generations of developments in our industry, and increasingly it becomes much harder to catch up. Now, if we, I mentioned to James that I used to be involved with the six-pack meetings. They used to meet every Monday afternoon or Monday evening, and there would be a topic, but the people, we were just a small group that was sort of enough to fit around a table, or we had a sort of ate and had a drink, and the topic was always just a loose framework for a general discussion where people offered, sort of quite often were talking, providing their own experiences. And for me, that was the real meat and the real benefit of those meetings. And if we have another sort of program, some more get-togethers like we did in June, perhaps we could sort of organise a place where it is easy to sort of find the table where we could just eat and be able to sort of hear each other easily, and sort of have a topic that sort of be an opportunity for us to sort of share our experiences with each other. I'm sure that sort of we'd all have lots of experiences, say upgrading and between these different technologies and so what strategies that we our companies applied. Now the ship of Theseus.
Stephen, just to jump in there, Francis has got a comment or a question, really. Do you want to, Francis, or do you want me?
No, I can say it. I think way earlier you mentioned like software entropy, and I was just wondering, I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that. Is that equivalent to like complexity?
Or... Yeah. Well, I guess yes. Where the quality of the code just keeps declining as well. I guess sort of it becomes very much a big ball of mud eventually.
Okay.
Sort of not more and more difficult to work with.
Yeah. So entropy is more like maintainability then. Right.
Yeah, maintainability, but also extensibility. So we're. Okay. I mean, I said we're now working at sort of higher levels of abstraction. Sort of, whereas let's say if you're working with C++, well, you're managing memory yourself. In addition to writing the logic to that actually delivers the business value. So with object-oriented programming, where we sort of we're using classes and those object concepts to work at a higher level, which is sort of abstraction, which is sort of much closer to the problem space of that we're trying to solve, as opposed to say the implementation space of what you need to do to actually get that application to run. And so that and the software entropy sort of I guess sort of refactoring is sort of often sort of offered as a means of being able to say limit and counteract software entropy, where sort of ideally sort of in a let's say in a good agile environment, the more you work on code, the cleaner it should become, the closer it should reflect, let's say the domain models, and less a consistent domain model, and less sort of reflect sort of how it is implemented. That's the theory. And I guess now the ship of Theseus. Okay, this is sort of Theseus was an ancient king from Greek mythology, and he saved the children of Athens from King Minos by escaping on a ship to Delos. And apparently every year thereafter, the Athenians would reenact this great event by hopping onto the same ship, the Theseus, and take a trip out to Delos. Now, over several hundred years, it was the same ship, but it had, over that time, it had been maintained and virtually probably replaced maybe the entire thing several times. And Greek philosophers, as they're prone to do, were sort of asking, well, is this the same ship if there's nothing of the original ship and it's been virtually replaced, if not once or twice over that time? And I remember one of the places I was, the chief product officer used that as a metaphor for describing, say, the strategy that we would be using for moving from a .NET 4.8 to a microservices based application, because we couldn't afford to stop development on the existing application and develop a brand new application. We would have to maintain our market presence that we were always wanting to increase. We would have to, in effect, progressively rebuild our application. So initially by adding new functionality to it in the forms of, say, new microservices, and then eventually sort of replacing the existing functionality with microservices. Now, and the other aspect, I guess we could discuss that, I'm sure we would also have lots of stories, would be so the cost of not incurring. What's happened at environments where we chose it was too hard. So it was easy just to keep going with the existing technology stack, and sort of what was the experience after that. Now, I've always thought, sort of with our software development careers, well, in my case, I've always considered it's a sort of a chicken and egg situation, where because there are so many developments, in the frameworks, the languages, and the tools, etc., that I'm always conscious that I've got to, wherever I am, I've got to be creating opportunities to get hands-on experience with newer emerging technologies, so that the next time I'm looking for work, that I will have a skill set that employers are looking for. And I'm conscious that it's too easy to find yourself in an environment where it's almost a cul-de-sac, where you feel that if I spend too much time here, then, or the longer I spend here, well, the more difficult it is going to find work elsewhere later on. I can remember one place where I was working, it was a WinForms environment, and I came to IT development from a commercial accounting background, and we were developing cutting edge tax accounting software, which I loved doing, but I was very conscious that, well, nobody else was developing WinForms applications. This is back in, say, the noughties, 2000s. Well, everybody were developing, say, WinForms or web forms, or the ASP.NET MVC applications. So I had to sort of make the jump so as to not sort of become a legacy developer myself. And when I sort of, I've always been conscious of that. And when I sort of started preparing, say, for this talk on technical debt and this externally imposed source of technical debt, I thought, well, this is exactly the same thing. That it's just that it's the speed of change in our environment, and the expertise and hands-on experience I'm expected to have each time I go looking for work. Well, that's because of all the changes that are happening in our development environment. And when you think of it, so it's the same source of technical debt. And when you think about it, well, the life cycle of our careers is so much longer than the life cycle of any application we work on at any point of our career. So this impacts our careers so much more than it does any application. So there's always the need to sort of to study new practices and technologies, and being part of, say, developer groups such as this is always a great source of inspiration to do that. So because and that I mean, I think we're so fortunate to work in an industry like this, because software development is such a young and vibrant science, and we're looking for direction from other more established science, like, say, engineering and architecture. We sort of borrow terms and some practices from them, and that a great part of our young and vibrant science and industry is that with the open source movement, we're not trying to hide and protect our IP from each other. We're wanting to share it with each other and sort of port tools and practices across languages. Say with test-driven development. So NUnit sort of was a port from JUnit from the Java space in the very early days of C#. And in fact, and I always say that, I mean, if you have a passion for your craft, you could never be bored. Now, Kent Beck, one of the legendary sort of founding figures in the Agile movement, again, another Agile Manifesto signatory, in one of his seminal books, it was titled Extreme Programming Explained, Embrace Change. And to me, I think sort of what I get from this technical debt is not just sort of in whatever application environments we're working on, and as it applies to our own developer careers, embrace change. That's what we should be doing. Now, was that a lightning talk, or just a nicely spaced talk?
Nicely timed. You do have a question here from George. I'll just pop it up. So George is saying, how would you estimate the actual dollar figure of technical debt? Something that you could justify a business case to do something about it.
Well, I guess it would depend on sort of what you are what you are trying to incorporate as part of that technical debt, and I mentioned, say, I think the sort of one of the real biggies that you have to overcome, and it's something, is that moving from .NET 4.8, that the Windows operating system constrained .NET framework, to the .NET Core and what we now call .NET, which can run on which is not constrained to any framework. So I would think that sort of one thing I want to sort of get across is that sort of that the longer we leave it, that the greater the cost in remaining in what I guess what we would call sort of a legacy technology stack or legacy development practices. But James, you would have been, say, with ThoughtWorks, were you sort of working a lot with clients who were sort of trying to incorporate, make those jumps and incorporate, say, new technologies and practices?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, on making a business case, I'd be suggesting you'd bring it back to money, as you're saying, George, with the actual dollars. So, I mean, you could work out the costs of lost productivity or lost sales, or people leaving because you didn't have like a software as service solution and they had to install like a VB app or whatever. You could have a look at your retention and maybe make some guesses along there of the costs that you were doing. You look at hiring as well and how hard it was to hire and how people are leaving. So depending on the particular situation, of course, I think you'd want to bring it back to money. And of course, these things would be approximate, or I mean, what productivity you would have in a better language or something like that. You could estimate maybe you could do 20% faster development if you didn't have to do memory management or something like that. If it was in C++, or get some sort of general industry metric on C++ development speed versus C# development speed or something. So I'd be attempting to pull something together like that, but it would of course be kind of pie in the sky, as Francis said. But if you had reasonable guesses at these things, then potentially it could add up to a believable business case, I think.
Yeah, and James, eventually the cost would become existential for the company, wouldn't it? If you're unable to employ developers, if you're unable to compete with your competitors.
Mm-hmm.
So
so I think that's right. And Francis has also said, if you've got prod outages and incidents, then I mean those ones are very quantifiable as costly things that will cost you sales or cost you reputation, cost you retention, etc.
And possibly sort of also as well, sort of I think sort of looking for strategies, let's say upgrade strategies, that are sort of, less costly and less disruptive, that allow you to sort of keep business as usual going. And so one place where it was we had it was ASP.MVC, and the client was MVC plus jQuery for reactivity on the client. Well, that becomes sort of very awkward. jQuery is sort of great for manipulating the DOM, but it's also great for sort of generating a lot of spaghetti code. Right? So a great development from that was to start say web APIs on the back end, and a Spark client like Angular on the front end, so that for new development and eventually sort of replace your existing development. So there's a way of being able to, like that ship of Theseus, of transitioning your application between, say, generations in a reasonably harmonious way.
Any other questions? Crowd there. And did you want to say that one, Francis? Your mic working there? You're just muted at the moment. Francis, you're muted.
Yeah, I was going to type out something, but so Stephen was speaking, but I might as well say. But I think another aspect of technical debt that isn't discussed is if you can actually not just use it as an opportunity to obviously fix up your systems, but you can, if you do it well, you can actually use it to kind of boost like the mental state, and also like it will be part of your company culture, where you can kind of use kind of like sprints where you do refactoring, and then when you fix some of the long running debt, to actually you want to give developers kind of like the sense that like they have the power to fix things.
Yeah, things are getting better rather than getting worse.
Yeah.
Feeling in the company that you're not just waiting for it all to fall, all the wheels to fall off.
Exactly. And like no one talks about like the mental boost, but like if you, I don't know, it's like I don't know if you guys ever fixed something that's just hanging around and it's just been niggling in the back of your head, and then that feeling of like eureka when you actually get to tackle it and finish it, and to see actually like like, I don't know, boosting your business, even if it's in a very minute way. I think that's a big thing that people don't talk about. So you can, if you're smart enough, you can kind of use it not only just to fix, trim your backlog a bit and fix your technical debt, but you can really use it to boost your developers, especially if you've got a team of, say, high performers, but they're also highly under pressure. No one wants to do like feature sprints all the time, 52, 26 sprints a year. You've got to give them something to kind of give them a break, mental break more than anything.
Francis, cycles, let's say like 2 or 3 feature development sprints, and then a technical debt sprint.
That to me sounds like
it's
almost
very hard to justify it.
That just sounds like almost a pipe dream, almost like
we used to
dream, but
I think that sort of, it happened at this organization, and to me it reflected they recognized, it was a startup that was now in the sort of scale up phase, had transitioned from the startup to the scale up phase. And had recognized that there's a lot of, let's say, technical debt that had accumulated in the startup.
Yeah. Okay. I think maybe that might be one of the very few.
Usually we sort of
scenarios where you could justify that, but I think in all other kind of cases, I don't know. I don't know if any company has, especially if you've got companies with shareholders, they're going to be happy about you spending every third sprint.
Business people. I think a different way to do it is you use some of your time every iteration or every sprint for these improvements, and you tie them to the new features, right? So before you work in this area again, you need to improve it a bit, right? So say it's downloading CSVs or something, right? So maybe now you have to touch it again because you want to add another, 6 fields onto your CSV. So instead of just adding the 6 fields in, you upgrade your CSV library to a newer version that you needed to do anyway, and then you add your 6 fields. So if you wouldn't have done any technical debt, maybe you could have done it twice as fast, but it would cause you problems down the line. So I think the easiest way to keep on top of the technical debt is whenever you touch an area, then you do some improvement in that area as well as the feature. And it means your overall feature development is slower, but you maintain the code quality as you go along. But you never need to justify to a business that it's been 2 weeks and you haven't produced anything. And as a consultant that paid you a pile of money and you haven't made them anything that they can point a stick at. So I think the combination of it works well. We used to have different colored cards. So we used to have like yellow cards for the tech tasks and like blue cards or whatever for the story cards. And then we did a mix each iteration. Though usually, it was heavily weighted towards features, but you put in a level of the yellow cards as well so that you did improve things as you went. And always, whenever you touched the area, you tried to improve it a bit as well as adding the features there. Not saying that having a separate sprint wouldn't be good, but it is very hard to convince people that you're spending their money wisely if they don't see anything come out of it. We've got a few other questions. What have we got? So we've got C#T. Sometimes tech upgrades might entangle with external dependencies, e.g. for API service providers. The API integrators users play a big role. Even newer versions of the API might not promote them to invest in upgrading to latest APIs. Wondering what you'd suggest in these scenarios. Right, so saying that that when things upgrade in APIs, then what would you suggest to justify it? So part of it is that people deprecate the old APIs at some point, and that comes to George's one when you come to the end of vendor support. So eventually you kind of need to upgrade stuff so that you stay under support and get security patches and all the rest. So I suppose that's for the API upgrades at the end too. But if you're not providing any more business value and it's still supported for many years, then it's hard to justify. But maybe you should work on something else in that case and come back to it when there is something that adds the business value, or you're forced by the upgrade policy of the provider. Francis, Stephen, you got any thoughts on that?
I guess I just thought of maybe one way of selling it is sometimes like bugs could break one version of API, but another version might be working. So if you want to kind of sell it as, look, like we kind of exposed, we have this kind of like, kind of, I guess, like a critical path where we're just reliant on this one version of API. Whereas, if you've got kind of two, if you can have code that can work with both, if one breaks, for example, you can kind of turn one off and switch the other on. And that's one way of selling it. I imagine you can't sell that to all the APIs, maybe only the critical ones that you have. But yeah, other than that, I guess, sometimes, especially when like some of these things are just a cog in the wheel, and it's really hard to kind of show why you need to do some of these work. I think, I guess it's, I think a lot of this comes down to communication. So I think as I think it's kind of like our job in IT to try and communicate as much of this to the business as possible. Like you can't expect them to understand it, but that doesn't mean that you should just give up and so on. I think a lot of people may do want to understand it, but from the business side, but they just don't know where to start and how. So I always think that like the more you actually spend some time explaining some of these things, and the better understanding that the business have of, they don't have to have a complete understanding, but it's gonna be like whatever work you put in to kind of getting the business getting used to the idea of technical debt, and I know everything is rosy right now, but from our viewpoint, that's not always the case. Something could blow up or something. There's so many things that could kind of these things can blow up and kind of cause an outage, right? For example, so like what we're trying to do is we're trying to be as resilient. We're trying to build something, not only deliver features, but another flip side of it is we also have to kind of build resilience and make sure that our business is resilient, right? So the business is only as resilient as the systems that support it. So I think it's something that you're going to have to like just plant little ideas or little concepts to them, and eventually I think they'll come around and understanding. They'll like when it comes to like something happening and you really need the business buy into something. I think that's when some of these efforts will kind of pay off, and there'll be more understanding, rather than you trying to sell something right as something happened. I think that's going to be always a little bit tougher. So
I think also when you're upgrading, not so much let's say APIs, but let's say you're upgrading say versions of Angular, you've got to be cognizant of all the other dependencies as well. And just have a look at sort of a package.json, or how much is in node modules, just as an example of what's involved say in the dependencies.
Oh yeah, I mean not just Angular, but like any modern software stack these days. It's just a nightmare, right? Yeah. So
all right, we are coming to time, so maybe switch to the questions for the audience, unless there's any last pressing questions. All right, so let's see. So for for just one JetBrains license, so what
happened to the other one?
Well, I've got a second question for the second one.
Okay.
Don't worry, we've still got 2 on offer. So give me 2 major inflection points, big software changes that have happened that Stephen mentioned for the first license. No shrinkflation in licenses here. No, it might be $5 coffees, but we've still got 2 JetBrains licenses. All right, Lord Teaspoon, I think you've scored yourself a JetBrains license. I think you might be in time for a renewal or something like that by now. So yeah, drop me a message. Yeah, there you go. About to renew. Perfect. Yes, they also work for renewals. So send me your email address just so I remember. And the competition was fierce. We haven't come to the second harder question yet. Yeah, so drop me email. You probably got my email already from last one, so I can remember to send it to you. And also, now this one's a harder question. All right, so what was the deal with the ship of Theseus? Right, so what was that metaphor about in software terms? It sounds like people are typing.
You would have to write a book to answer
that. Well, I mean, the key principle of the ship of Theseus, right? Around Lord Teaspoon, do you need 2 licenses? You can get 2 products if you want. It's usually Francis doesn't need a license, as you can see. C#T, I think on the right track, but I think it was more about like there was a central question, right, about this ship. So what was the central question after all this time and all the changes? Maybe this question's too hard. If no one's got an answer, I'll make up something else. Stephen, do you want a JetBrains license?
No. I've already got 2. I don't need
anymore. I think we've been too generous.
Maybe about September, October next year.
All right. So it doesn't last that long. You have to get a fresh one. So my recollection of the ship of Theseus stuff was that the ship was like hundreds of years old. Hey, Lord Teaspoon, here you go. Yes, is it still the same ship? So I think Stephen's point is if you replace every component of the software, is it still the same software? Is the philosophical question here. So, all right.
We would consider it the same application, wouldn't we?
I think so.
Yeah.
Besides, sorry, go on.
Well, I mean, sort of, I guess you can replace an application, build a completely new one. But if you're sort of smart enough to be able to sort of rebuild it in place, then you're not disrupting sort of your normal business.
That's right. I mean, the strangler pattern and that sort of thing, where you keep the app running and then you just replace bits of it as you go, is a nice way. I mean, if you do a big bang rewrite, then often you end up with something that doesn't work. And then maybe you go back to the other app, or
something that's completely new to the to your users.
To users as well. So a risky move and expensive compared to strangler pattern or something along those lines, progressively replacing it. All right. Well, Lord Teaspoon, I think you are the ultimate winner for tonight, and I'll give you both licenses. So do send me an email. You can give one away to someone else if you've got too many licenses. But you did answer both questions, so I think you're well deserving.
Hey, James, is that the ship of Theseus in the background?
It's not a ship. Oh yeah, so this ship has been replaced partly. That background there is actually a caper cat catamaran that I actually own. So
What's it called? Not the ship of Theseus, is it?
It's called Ruby Cat, actually.
So which beach is it marooned on?
That's 7 Shillings Beach in the eastern suburbs. So you can sail like from where I am, like in the north, under the harbour bridge and to the east, and pull up on a beach, which is quite cool, really. So there you go.
You sell it yourself?
Yeah, I did. There's no picture of me in it because I was taking the picture, but behind me there's a couple of friends I sailed with as well.
Okay, so it's not it's not sort of single sailor boat. It's for multiple people.
It's better with like 2 sailors.
Yeah,
but you can do it with 1.
How long would it take to get to Hobart?
I think you'd have to be a very good sailor to get to Hobart. You might want to choose the right weather window rather than going during the race time. And I think
How many jet brains licenses would you need?
How many?
I'm not sure whether there's any need to give any away anymore. All right. Well, thank you.
If you do it to Hobart, you might find that you're replacing it sort of between there and halfway there.
It might be the ship of Theseus, indeed. Yes, I've replaced bits of
before
it.
You get to Hobart.
I think you'd do a very careful trip with that. So yes, if anyone has any talks, we're done for the year, I think, because the next one is like usually 25th of January or 24th of January or something, where people are less keen to hear technical talks. Yes, and thank you, Stephen, very much for your talk, and sorry for the technical difficulties at the start.
No. Thank you for your help.
We need to fix that technical bit, James.
We tried to. I reconnected to Twitch because we had the problems last time, and maybe that's why it had a delayed start as well, getting that to start streaming through.
Next year, sort of, you anticipate the same format? Do you ever sort of anticipate sort of going back in person, or?
We've talked about it, but haven't really progressed it very far due to lack of venue and lack of sponsor these days. And Francis being in different countries quite a lot of the time. So, I mean, that's to be determined.
I'm trying to stay in Australia. I'm really trying.
So, I wouldn't rule it out, but we haven't done anything about it seriously at this point.
I mean, if that's something that people are really interested in, like, you need to let us know, I guess.
Or even just sort of, I mean, if we had, that the suggestion that, say, if we had, say, a get together, like we did, sort of, but at a place where it's easy to sort of, get around a table and talk, and just sort of have a particular topic for discussion where, everybody sort of, provides their own experiences. I think that would be.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was fun. I think last time,
So I mean, the Christmas meetup, we generally do before Christmas, a meetup in a pub or outside. Last time I think it was a bit quieter than inside the pub, so you could talk a little bit more. We had North Sydney and we had near Central last time. My boat's not quite big enough at this point to take everyone. If I buy a bigger boat, then we could do it aboard. But yeah, at this point, you're probably pushing it.
Yeah, and I tell you what I think would be possibly sort of if we're able to say get people that say okay, Dr. Neil Rudin or Richard Banks or maybe even yourself. People are sort of, I love origin stories. People say, well, let's say who started these groups, like the old .NET group or say the Six-Pack group, almost 20 years ago, what the environment was like then and how it's changed now and sort of how they sort of see things happening in the future. The
future is very hard to predict. There's The futurists try, but they're not always on the track. Well, the
You can
future
be
is
sure that there'll be a lot of
AI.
technical debt.
Yes, there'll always be a lot of technical debt, and with the help of AI, there'll be more.
More debt. There'll be more debt.
More debt.
In fact, be a technical debt specialist. That'll
There'll be more technical debt and less of us developers.
Well, you see, there might be a lot of developers needed to run ChatGPT and do the last 20% on each item that ChatGPT does some first bit on.
When they hallucinate.
So, all right. Also, if anyone does have a talk that they're interested in giving next year, then let us know. It'd be January. I think, Francis,
we have someone lined up with January. And
yeah.
Then,
so
I've got some ideas about. I may give one. I think it depends on whether I've actually submitted some talks for. It's the first time I've actually submitted some talks for like a big conference. So I'm just waiting on the outcome of that. So fingers crossed.
Oh yeah,
you can practice on us, Francis.
Yeah.
No, the point is, I need I want to practice during the conference, and then I could bring the refined version
to Alternate. Only the best for Alternate. That's right.
Exactly.
I like your attitude. I should mention that Yao conference is coming up in December, so I'll be at that one. And there's also Programmable is in March next year.
Yeah.
And we've got free tickets, which we'll give away, I guess, in January for that.
Yeah, I'm going to DDD Melbourne myself. I think that's the only one I booked in for. So if anyone's going to DDD Melbourne, let me know and we can hook up.
And anyone's going to Yao, let me know. I'll see you there.
Is DDD Melbourne developer, or domain-driven design?
It's a developer.
Okay.
Maybe there's some domain-driven design included as well. I wouldn't rule it out.
I mean, it's pretty diverse. Like, I think they've managed to hold off like all the talks being overrun by AI. Obviously, there is some, but
87% AI related.
No, it's a lot less than that. I think they're very cognizant that they want to maintain the original spirit of the conference.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. It's a great conference. I absolutely love it.
All right. Well, on that note, we should probably let everyone go because we're at like 8:20 already. So thank you all, everyone, and we'll send you some details for the Christmas meetup when we work out some. But assume, I suppose, before Christmas and at some convenient venue in the city or North Sydney.
Yeah, we'll send out a survey.
Yeah, it's been fun each time to actually see each other in person. So yeah, let's do it again. All right. Okay. Night, everyone.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Okay. Ciao.